It was 5 years ago, around this same time of year, we were moving our family of 4 at the time onto our homestead. Jim was still deep in house renovations. We were sleeping on mattresses on the floor in the 2 bedrooms that had flooring. We had no kitchen yet, and we were primarily living out of our basement. It was chaos. But I remember getting up every morning being so excited that this dream that we had for years prior was actually becoming a reality. And with it being fall, the weather was mild, there were the beautiful changing colors, it was about the most idyllic time to be on the homestead. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of the season that we're in now. Now we're a family of 7 instead of 4, and we have a 1-month-old. Things are still chaos, but in a different way. We have more kids and less home renovations, but it's still such a sweet time of the year, and I can fully attest to 5 years in, still waking up with that same excitement of being able to live out this life that we dreamed of. With being still freshly postpartum, I'm not doing a morning walk like I normally would each morning, and my day in a lot of ways is dictated by Sam's sleeping and eating schedule, but he's been typically getting up to eat around 5 in the morning, and then we'll go back to sleep for a couple of hours. And this is wonderful because it gives me a chance to enjoy the peacefulness of the morning before everyone is up to eat breakfast, read, and milk Thimble, our family milk cow. Okay, let me just show you a quick lay of the land here with breakfast every morning. So now that I am postpartum, I've talked about carrot salad before, but carrot salad is just shredded carrots with apple cider vinegar and a little bit of coconut oil. And it has been huge for me in terms of balancing hormones and digestion, having this in the morning first thing. But when I was pregnant, I had a really hard time having carrot salad. It didn't sound good. And so I always had my eggs, but I'm back, now that I'm postpartum, to incorporating carrot salad every morning. So I always have that along with my lemon juice water with salt. So that's how I always start the morning. And then after I finish that, we go to our egg course. So this is 4 scrambled eggs with a scoop of liver pate mixed in and topped with sauerkraut. I cannot emphasize enough how important having a good, solid, nutrient-dense breakfast full of protein is. I just feel like then whatever comes my way the rest of the day, it's such a good foundation. I always feel really good after, really energized, which is just so important with our full days. Oh, and then for supplements, I take cod liver oil, and then I'm still taking a prenatal vitamin while I'm nursing. Milking Thimble is one of my favorite rhythms of the day, and it has been ever since we got her. When we moved onto our homestead, one of the sources of my excitement was just being able to wake up and walk out to our field to milk her. We actually got Thimble the year before we moved on to our homestead. We lived in town without any land, but we got an offer that we couldn't refuse to purchase a 3-year-old Jersey milk cow from another family who realized that milking a cow just wasn't for them. It sounded crazy at the time, but having a milk cow had always been a dream. So where there's a will, there's a way. We had friends that let us board her at their farm for that year before we found our property. And so every morning I would load up our 3-year-old and our 1-year-old at the time, and we'd drive to our friend's farm to milk every morning. And I loved it. So a year later, when I was able to just roll out of bed, throw my boots on, and not have to worry about bundling up babies and toddlers or drive anywhere, it made it all the better. After milking, it's off to the races. Sam is still sleeping, but everyone is up and it's go time. The last 3 days were all about harvesting potatoes, and when we finished, that meant we were wrapped up with all of our harvesting for 2025, which feels so good. It was especially nice because the weather was perfect, and we're actually expecting our first snow here in the next few days. Every year, harvesting potatoes is one of those activities that I look forward to. Our kids are typically in and out, helping us and playing and doing their own thing, but it always feels like this really connective time where we can talk through what's going on and dream together about what's coming. Because life is full, and so the chances to sit down and do this don't usually happen, but we can do it while we're just going down the row, pulling up potatoes, and brushing the dirt off of them. I love how homesteading stacks so much of what we want to be true in our lives.
In total, we spent 3 half-day sessions harvesting our potatoes, which was actually quicker than we expected. That's roughly the same amount of time we spent harvesting our sweet potatoes, but we had double the amount of length of potato rows. One of the reasons it went quicker, we realized, is that our potatoes grew much more in one consistent clump than they have in the past, making them easier to find and then dig up. Our best guess is that this was the result of our soil being more thoroughly tilled this year, so the potatoes were content to just grow directly under the plants instead of spreading out in search of looser soils.
Look at that guy. Holy cow.
The other thing that was interesting for us to track was which potatoes had pest damage and which didn't. It was pretty consistent that our yellow Corolla potatoes and white Elba potatoes had lots of bite marks from worms and slugs and other critters, and there were a noticeable amount that had been entirely eaten. But our Adirondack blue potatoes, as well as the red potatoes we grow, which we're pretty sure are the dark red Norland variety, were almost entirely untouched, and we had really good yields from both those purple and red potatoes. The red potatoes have also stored really well for us in the past, and we find we really enjoy eating them. So we'll see how they store this winter, but while the Corollas and Elbas have been the potatoes we favored in the past, we're really considering making the red potatoes what we grow the most of moving forward. Even with some pest damage, it was one of our best potato hauls yet. We pulled in 10 bins of potatoes, which was somewhere in the 400 to 500 pound range. That will be plenty of potatoes for our family for the year ahead, as well as setting aside some for seed. And homegrown potatoes are also a really fun thing to share with friends and family when you have an abundance.
The big goal for today is to get our garlic planted. But first, I want to squeeze in some homeschooling stuff, and then Sam has his 1-month pediatrician appointment. He is actually 1 month old today. We always make it a point to do a photo session in that first year on each month. Jim got this simple chalkboard sign before our first was born, and it's been a tradition of ours ever since. It's actually something that our older kids get really excited about too, which makes it even more fun. For Christmas, every year in our kids' stockings, I make a chat book, which is basically just a picture book of our kids with photos of them from the previous year. In this age of everything being digital, they really seem to appreciate having these tangible, physical pictures to pull out and look at, which they do all the time. And it sparks these sweet memories like these monthly photo shoots. Everyone squeeze in tight like you like each other.
Squeeze on in, everyone.
Oh, that's better.
All right, everybody, look here.
Get your little hat on you. Claire, can I have the blanket?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. All right, buddy. While I'm at the pediatrician, Jim is going to start getting our beds prepped for garlic.
That's mine.
Honestly, looking back at last year, we were way more on top of it. We had gone through and wheel hoed our whole garden and added multiple layers of compost, fertilizer, and a soil amendment. This year, we aren't there. I hadn't even thought about garlic until the day we were planting it. But we're just happy to be getting the garlic in the ground, and we'll use whatever we have on hand. We never have an exact science when it comes to prepping garden rows, but it always involves some form of wheel hoeing, adding compost and amendments, and broad forking. So I started by pulling out as many of the large established weeds as I could by hand, and then coming through with a wheel hoe to clear out the rest. This is one of my favorite garden tools. It's basically a big blade with a wheel attached to it, and as you rock it back and forth, the blade cuts through the soil, also cutting through the roots of weeds. It takes effort, but it's a great way of clearing out and loosening your soil before reforming your garden beds. The other thing I realized is that our straw mulch that we put on top of our garlic last year was starting to break down, but there was still a pretty good layer of it on top of the row. The wheel hoe kept getting jammed up with the straw, so I ended up just raking all the straw off of the row to finish wheel hoeing. But I kept the straw close by so we could add it back in later, since it would continue to break down and add some nice organic matter back into the soil. Since we didn't plan ahead and order any fertilizer or soil amendments yet, the two things we did have on hand were some homemade compost and then some biochar, which we had added to the rest of our gardens in the spring, but never added any to this row since we didn't have it yet when we planted our garlic last fall. I spread out one bucket of the biochar on the row, and biochar basically acts as a super sponge that will absorb and then release tons of nutrients into your soil. It's not ideal to just add the raw biochar onto the row without inoculating it with something first, but the next thing I did was add the straw from last year back on top of it. And my logic was that the straw also does a lot of absorbing, so as the straw continued to break down and decompose in the row, it would provide a good amount of nutrients for the biochar to absorb. Again, we were kind of just working on the fly here with what we had, so we'll see how it all works out. Once the bed was pretty well formed, then I came through with the broad fork. The tines of broad forks work deep down into the soil and loosen things up without completely disturbing the structure of the soil. It's an awesome no-till gardening tool that has allowed us to plant in the same beds in this kitchen garden space year after year while keeping the soil loose. The kids also love hopping on there and giving it a go. Then our last layer was some of our compost. We didn't have a ton of compost, but it was just enough for a solid layer on top of this row. And we'll order some more soil amendments from Redmond Agriculture like we did last year to add into the rest of this garden before putting it to rest for the winter. It was a solid morning of prepping the garden rows, and we'll be ready to plant our garlic into it after lunch.
All right, for lunch today, we're having this chicken sweet potato curry served with rice. So this is actually something that I made earlier in the week in a big batch, and now I'm just reheating it, and this is perfect. I do this all the time for these busy full mornings, making things in advance in big batches so that I can just reheat as needed throughout the week. And a big thing that I do pretty much weekly around here is make a huge pot of rice at the beginning of the week. I cook it in chicken broth, so this helps to give it extra protein, extra nutrients, and then cool it down and reheat it as needed throughout the week. And so by doing that, by chilling it and then reheating it, it actually lowers the glycemic index of the rice. And this is something, rice is just one of those things that our kids love. And I love that when it's cooked in chicken broth, right, they're getting all that extra good stuff, and it just helps fill bellies. You can serve it as a side, you can make quick egg fried rice. It's just a really easy staple thing that I can turn into so many extra meals when there are lots of hungry mouths to feed.
You want to serve up some of your rice? It's kind of crispy.
I'll take a million scoops. I take one. 250 frolics.
I need to make more rice, Mommy.
I take one.
Always.
I take one.
one scoop for you.
Yeah.
All right, we ready? Do you guys remember how to do this?
Yeah.
Dough blade, cutting board. All right, so we'll put the cloves in here.
Can we just do this?
So give it a bam.
Now? We can do it?
Bam. Wait, was there a secret to this?
No.
You gotta do it hard. Look how huge this clove is. Giant.
I
Holy
think
moly.
I got. Mom, can you let me one?
In past years, planting garlic felt like this huge chore that took forever. And that was primarily because we would individually peel each of the cloves of garlic. By the end, our hands would hurt and everyone would be complaining. But last year we learned what we call the BAM method to separate out the cloves of garlic in each bulb. All you do is smash the stem of the garlic bulb on the cutting board. You need to hit it in the right spot and give it a good firm whack, but then the cloves of garlic separate easily. We were able to do around 40 to 50 bulbs of garlic this way in just a couple of minutes, saving us a ton of time and frustration. So a garlic seed is just planting an individual clove of garlic into the ground in the fall. And then in the summer, you have a whole bulb of garlic for each of the cloves that you planted. We grow a hardneck variety of garlic called music garlic. Hardneck garlic is the type that forms a garlic scape in the early summer and is generally better for cooler climates. Softneck garlic is better for warmer climates and is the type that you can braid after, but it doesn't form a garlic scape. We originally bought the seed of this music garlic from a farm in our area when we moved onto our homestead, and we've been growing it ever since by saving and planting extra cloves of garlic year after year.
Okay.
Should I go get some more?
Mom, look how big this clove is.
That's giant.
Yeah.
Since our cloves of garlic grew so gigantic this year, and we weren't sure how many we'd have to plant, we wanted to space the garlic out on the garden bed first before planting them. We do 4 rows spaced about 6 to 8 inches apart, and then we plant each garlic clove around 4 to 6 inches apart in the rows. In total, we counted around 160 garlic cloves that we were planting, which is comparable to what we've grown in the past and seems to be about the right amount for us to use both for fresh eating all year round as well as seed for the following year. Once we were happy with the spacing, we just came back through and pressed the clove of garlic down about 2 inches into the soil with our hands. You want to make sure that the pointy side of the garlic clove is facing up. Then I managed to scrounge together another wheelbarrow full of compost and added that on top. The last steps we do then are to add some fencing around the garlic bed so that nothing gets in there and destroys it or digs things up, and then adding another layer of straw mulch on top. We were quickly running out of daylight to get things done today like we had hoped, but the next day my parents came back over to help with some of the outside cleanup, and I pounded in some T-posts around the garden bed and then wrapped a roll of leftover chicken wire around the garlic. Nothing has ever messed with it this way. Then I added a couple-inch layer of straw on top, and we'll be so excited to see rows of garlic plants popping through come spring.
Hey buddy, you want to come in here? Mwah. So tight. Alright buddy, let's make some dinner. Okay, let's make some dinner. All right, so dinner tonight is gonna be steak and leftover mashed potatoes. When we need a meal fast, I love to do things like steaks, pork chops, fish, things that I can cook up in just a couple minutes on high heat on a cast iron pan on the stove. It's super easy. And then mashed potatoes are another one, like the rice I talked about for lunch, that are great to make in bulk. I make a big pan of mashed potatoes that will feed us for a few meals. And then just like the rice, where when you cook it and then you cool it and you reheat it, it lowers the glycemic index of the rice. The same thing is true for potatoes. So it's a great one to make in advance, reheat when you need it throughout the week, and then it just makes dinner so easy to throw together. After tucking our kids into bed around 7:30, we headed back down to the basement to lay out the potatoes that we had harvested to cure. We started with the red potatoes and our Elba potatoes, which are a white variety. These are the two varieties we grow that will store really well, staying firm into the spring months. We weren't sure what our space situation would be like for curing potatoes, but because the reds and the Elbas are the two varieties that store best, we knew we for sure wanted these two to be cured properly. Just like the sweet potatoes and the onions that we talked about in previous videos, curing just means to lay the potatoes in a single layer, not touching, where there's plenty of ventilation so that their skins can thicken and any blemishes can heal, to allow them to store as well as possible for as long as possible. The storage shelves that we got from Jim's parents worked great, and the red potatoes and Elba potatoes fit perfectly on one storage rack, and then we had space to store the blue Adirondack and Corolla potatoes on the other storage shelf. Those are the potatoes that we'll focus on eating first in these next 2 to 3 months because they tend to soften much more quickly. Every spring going into planting season, I always head in with a bit of trepidation, having no idea what the result will be from planting all of these seeds in the ground and hoping and praying that it's gonna be worth it. And then when we get to this point every year, while tired and ready to head into the slower winter season, we're constantly amazed and thankful at what this 5 acres is able to produce. By 9 o'clock, we're ready for sleep to enjoy another full day tomorrow.
What we got? Alright, that's looking good there, Sam.
Oh, Sam. Sammy.
Oh, yeah. We might be done with the sign. You knocked it over. You had a sign on your face.
You didn't get any pictures of that, did you?
I might have.